far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 women growing strong. 100 women where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny. Woman, woman.
As people of African descent, we offer this land recognition in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions toward decolonization. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. By Kay Johnson. Welcome to 100 ABC Fireside Chats. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold project initiated by co-authors and co-founders, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, and Donna Jones Simmons. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as our website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. In addition to our fireside chats on topics that matter to our communities, such as education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, trade union, and so much more, we offer biennial book launching galas and biannual symposiums. The co-authors and co-founders would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for attending today's fireside chat. We know that you will find these sessions educational and inspirational. So sit back, relax, and hear from our brilliant and talented honorees.
Good day, everyone. I'm Donna Jones Simmons, co-author, co-founder, and the architect of 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women. Today's conversation is about 30 seconds elevator pitches. Siobhan Calderbank, Sharon Hines, and Michelle Agard, all experienced speakers, will share their successes in using these quick pitches. Have you ever found yourself lost for words? I've been there when a curveball has been thrown at me. Here to moderate this fascinating conversation and gain some helpful tips is Sarah Onyango. Sarah is an award-winning bilingual community advocate and dynamic promoter of African, Caribbean, and Black causes in Ottawa, Gatineau. She is a well-known local media personality who has hosted and produced programs on CHUO 89.1 FM and Rogers TV Cable 2022 for over 20 years. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Donna. Bonjour, bonjour tout le monde. Hello, everybody. And greetings from the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people here in Gatineau, Quebec. I'm very honored to be moderating this fabulous discussion. It's one of my favorite topics. And we have some great panelists, as Donna mentioned, to really sort of take us through this conversation. They're going to be sharing tips and tricks and tactics that they have used to make connections and to make their point in order to accomplish their goals. I'll introduce them one at a time, starting with Michelle Agar. She is a senior manager, human resources business partner at TD Bank. Her career spans the financial and technology industries. She's a multidimensional person with responsibility for driving transformation across several areas, including application management, sales operation, and human resources. Next, we have Siobhan Calderbank. She is an experienced Senior Director of Talent Management and DEI at LCBO. She's also the founder of Butterfly Ladies, which is a mentoring program. She'll tell us about that, I'm sure. She's a recognized learning leader, consultant, DEI practitioner, award-winning author, et cetera, and we'll hear more about that as well. And last but certainly not least, we have Sharon Hines, a passionate and authentic, inclusive leader with over 25 years experience of international and Canadian career experience. She manages the Rogers Sports and Media All in Inclusion and Diversity Initiative. She's also a board member with the Canadian Country Music Association and Women in Film and Television. Welcome, ladies. Welcome. So I'm gonna, since I ended with Sharon, I'm gonna start with Sharon. So I just introduced each of you in 2 or 3 lines. We're gonna get right into the elevator pitch mode. What would you have said about yourself in 30 seconds? Sharon.
Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. And so before I get into that, it's no secret that we, all of us at some point in time throughout our career journey, stumbled at a networking event or froze at a job interview when asked, tell me about yourself. And there's so many various, versions and how to deliver an effective elevator pitch, whether you're introducing yourself at a networking event like this, virtually or in person, telling a new colleague about your business, or pitching to another professional. You want to capture attention and get it fast. So I'm going to give it my best shot. And today I chose a different style of elevator pitch because of the topic today. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharon Hines and my pronouns are she and her. So over the past 25 years, my career experience has spanned over multiple industry sectors. In my current role at Rogers Communications, I currently oversee the Rogers Sports and Media All-In Initiative. And at Rogers, one of our commitments is to support communities where we love, work, and play. My personal passion on the art of how to effectively network is why I've dedicated my time to really facilitate workshops for students on how to interview effectively and land that job. I'm known to my peers as a thought leader who gets things done. I now invite you all online to join us, this amazing panel, on this elevator ride. And my hope today is that we all learn something new. Elevate your first impression with an elevator pitch.
That's excellent. Although it is 30 seconds, it's more than 30 seconds. And the idea of the elevator pitch being the time it takes to get from one floor to the next, which is usually 30 seconds, because you don't know if that person is getting off the elevator and leaving forever, or they're going to turn around and go, wait, hold on. Let me get back in the elevator and here's some more. Let's hear from Siobhan. What would your elevator pitch have been to introduce yourself?
To introduce myself here or to
Mm,
introduce myself to
just
someone else?
generally, it doesn't have to be here.
Well, it kind of depends, right? So when
Mhm,
it's here, you know,
mhm,
how you introduce me is probably very close to how I would introduce myself. If it's as someone in an elevator where I'm meeting a senior leader, I might say something along the lines like, "Hi, my name's Siobhan Calderbank. I'm the Senior Director of Talent Management and DEI here. You know, I focus on attracting diverse candidates and engaging and upskilling our employees. And we do this to ensure that we have really strong leadership for the future. And my focus and my teams is to really build a purpose-driven, change-ready, and inclusive culture." And that's kind of where I would stop, right? So it's just kind of quick hits for somebody who's in the company. If they're not in the company, then I might need to explain what the heck is a talent management director, because less people don't know what that means. And so if I'm meeting somebody, you know, outside of my little work environment, I might have to then start explaining, you know, talent management really encompasses learning and talent development of all employees, performance management, kind of like your report cards that you got in school. And then I also do our change management to help people deal with changes that come to them in the work and transformation, as well as diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and ensuring that we have a culture that supports all employees. So that, again, it really depends on who I'm talking to.
mhm. And of course, you'd adapt the terminology as well and the languaging, because I'm
Yep.
not in that field. I'm not in HR. I have no idea DEI and this and that and transform. No. So, Michelle, how would you have introduced yourself if you had the opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's the blend of the two. So and again, it's depending on where you are and who your audience is. So I would start off with what my current role is. So I start saying, "Hi, my name is Michelle Agard. I'm a senior HR business partner supporting, you know, whatever area of the bank, especially if it's within you know, my group and I'm in an elevator with a peer or a senior leader. You know, just wanting to be very clear about where I work. So I'd continue to just clarify that and then just speak a little bit about what I do if they're not clear on what an HR business partner does, and then just thank them for their time. And then perhaps then spark that next opportunity for a conversation the next time we meet, whether or not it's in an elevator or in another meeting, because you'd be really surprised at how that one conversation in an elevator, so to speak, could then lead to other future conversations. So you want to really spark that that intention for a future conversation.
So be strategic, be
Absolutely.
intentional, make sure you know your audience, you know who you're talking to, and adapt your language and what you're going to focus on uh, in consequence. So, Michelle, since we ended with you, can you give us an example of when you had an opportunity, and can the other two panelists also be thinking of an instance where they delivered an elevator pitch and it was successful?
Yeah, and so I'll step back to when I would say I started my first role in a big organization, and I had, you know, built a relationship with my peers and my job and my brand in terms of what I brought to the table. And that's one of the things that's really important, ties into how you're able to deliver your elevator pitch, is being known for certain things.
Mhm.
And so a friend of mine had landed a new job, and then 6 months into it said, "Michelle, I think it would be great for you to join this group." And so her role actually was the literal next level in the building. So I was on level 5, she was on level 6. And so her manager ended up having to take that same elevator I did in the morning. And so it so happened that one morning he and I were in an elevator, and I just took the opportunity. I had no idea at the time what a formal elevator pitch was. But I said I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce myself because she, you know, shared with me his name and a little bit about him. So I took the opportunity to introduce myself. And it was from there that I was able to build that relationship. And again, just going back to what I do, you know, I'm friends with so-and-so, and, you know, she's talked about, you know, the wonderful things that you're doing in your group, and I'd love to join at some point in time. I kind of phrased it in that way. And again, it wasn't the perfect elevator pitch at the time, but it was that entry point into him knowing who I was and my interest. And so over time, I'd see him in the elevator again. I'd be like, "Hi, so-and-so, how are you?" And eventually that relationship built into an opportunity when he reached out to my manager and said, hey, is Michelle available? And so you'd be really shocked at how that initial conversation can spark the building of a relationship, whether or not it continues to just be in an elevator or at another team meeting, where you can then start to drive that next conversation about your career and again, future opportunities. So that was my example of how it first started.
That's that's really awesome. And the key, of course, is to be ready, you know, when the opportunity is there, right? To go from the chit chat to the actual sort of strategically moving towards a career change or whatever. Sharon, do you have an example that's memorable of an elevator pitch that was successful?
Absolutely. So again, I recall, back in the office, in the elevator, actually running into, and this is an example, if you run into either a VP or the CEO, for example. So it was more around like, hi, my name is Sharon Hines, and I currently work under, and I listed the VP's name and the department, and then quickly talked about what my manager commended me as weighing in the options of multiple perspectives and thinking outside the box. But one of the key things that I threw in there really quickly was the success of implementing a process improvement project, which was adopted by the entire department, and the ability to save time and money, just moving forward. And I think that resonated with that particular leader, because the next time he saw me, he read, oh, right, you're that manager that does that thinks about projects outside of the box. And that helped me to, when another project came up, to lead, and it was adapted across that particular business unit. So again, both, like Michelle mentioned and Sariban mentioned, that, elevator pitches, depending on the time and where you are and who you're speaking to, it will vary, because that's how you introduce yourself. Because if it's like, I work a lot in the DEI space, so sometimes it might be around that, the launching of the first Women of Color group, and how we brought in speakers to talk about, unconscious bias. It's various different things that you need to be ready and quick to really showcase, talk about the successes, not bragging, but your strengths, and also like that one thing that you're known as, so that people leave with that positive impression of you for the next time.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to come back to that whole tooting your own horn thing, because I had to learn that the very hard way. And in media, you need to be tooting your own horn at all times, or you're not getting that gig, right? So we're going to get back to that. Siobhan, do you have an instance that's memorable?
Yeah, right off the top of my mind, I remember speaking to a CEO of an organization, and but I let him introduce himself first and tell me a little bit about what he was looking for, what he needed. Then I introduced myself as somebody who's very passionate about learning, empowering women, change management, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And instead of like going into all the accolades that I've received, I actually switched the pitch to, I've listened to what you were talking about, and here's a couple of ideas that you might want to consider. And so immediately solving the problem for them with a couple of just one or two quick hits, they were hooked. And then they're like, you know what? I need you to come back. Can you speak to this audience on this day, this time? I think, and then tell me a little bit more. So you kind of have to leave them wanting a bit more, but enough that's intriguing that they know, hey, this person's got something. And the energy that you're transmitting when you're talking has to be powerful enough to engage them, to feel connected to you, to want to know more and to hear what you have to say. And that resulted in me going and speaking to another audience of individuals about diversity and inclusion and building up cultures that people respect each other, where they feel that sense of security, they feel heard, they feel valued, and what you can do to take back to your own organizations to really help build that type of environment.
Yeah, that's really great. I'm going to get back to the importance of listening and paying attention to the person in front of you and speaking to their need, and what they're talking about and what you could offer. So how much, okay, because pitching is very strategic, right? And not everybody walks around with strategies in their heads and, this is how I'm positioning myself in case this, in case that. How much weight to tooting your horn and how much weight to what Siobhan just mentioned, responding to a perceived need, an area where you could be useful? Michelle, how much weight?
It's a great question. In terms of weighting, I don't know that I would necessarily put a percentage on it, but I look at it as you are your best advocate for describing who you are. No one else is. And so taking the opportunity to share, I remember, again, a previous manager, actually, it's the same manager who gave me the job way back when. I was providing my performance feedback on my year and how I did. And, I put down a few things. I thought, yeah, I've captured everything. And he looked at it and he said, Michelle, I'm going to give this back to you. And I said, why? And he said, you've done a lot more than you're giving yourself credit for. And so it's about that self-reflection and knowing that when you speak about yourself confidently in a way that demonstrates what you do. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's the only way, other leaders and your peers will know what you can bring to the table from a partnership perspective, from a building and collaboration perspective. And your strengths could be strengths that other people are working on that you could actually do a give back for, and vice versa. I'm learning from all of you today on this panel on how you approach certain things. So it's a wonderful opportunity, taking that time to really talk about what you've accomplished, how you've accomplished it, rather, and your areas of opportunity for continued growth is just a really powerful tool to continue to apply to your career. So I encourage it.
Thanks for that, Michelle. So Sharon, you know how we're socialized as Black women, okay? We're the helpers, we're the supporters, we're the cheerleaders. But when it comes to cheering for ourselves and selling ourselves and our strengths, etc., it for the longest time it's been really frowned upon as showing off, right? So can you talk a bit about that and about how that hinders us as Black women, especially in the workplace and in the non-for-profit sector when we're trying to, appeal to potential funders, for example?
Yeah. And that's a great point. And Michelle, thanks very much, Sarah. Michelle just touched on it. And I feel, very much so as Black women and women of color, history has shown that, we truly go through different socioeconomic hurdles. And as such, we were raised to just be there, but not to speak up. And, one of the things is that we need to learn self-promotion. We need to not undersell our craft and, really and truly talk about what we bring to the table. Like, we need to speak up when we get invited to the table, because normally we don't. And so when you're at that table in those meetings, you need to speak up, and not only speak up, you need to seize the opportunities to really better yourself and your career. Like, in my own experience, I've always looked at ways to make myself more marketable, to be the go-to person. I'm always taking on new projects at work. Michelle mentioned it, the more you learn, the more you know. I'm listening right now and I'm hearing so many things, like Saiban mentioned some really key things that I'm like, oh, that's a great takeaway. Michelle did the same thing. So one of the things that we don't sell ourselves short, like we truly bring our lived experiences that we've over the years is why we're here today. And we continue to grow, we continue to learn. And for that, we need to also make sure that we are commending ourselves and also passing that torch, right? Our counterparts do that very well. So it's important for us to mentor and groom each other and to help each other for higher roles. We need to be comfortable in our own skin, with our own authenticity and what our current workplace expectations are. And very importantly, what makes us happy is very vital.
And Sarah, sorry, if I could
Yeah.
just add
Sure,
to that
sure.
point, it's, stepping back and thinking like how it's connected to that pitch. Because if you aren't comfortable in speaking about what you've been able to deliver, the outcomes, the impacts, then it's going to make your pitch very hard to kind of pull together. And it's not something that you just randomly, think about one day and then say. You got to kind of think about it, hone it, practice it, right? How are you going to start? How are you going to finish? What are you going to put in the middle, right? Like, what's that sandwich you're building? So it's very much connected. And part of that, to your point, is perhaps how some of us were raised about just doing our work and doing it well and everything will work itself out. But that's not the case. That's the baseline. You got to get that stuff done because that's part of your brand. But then you take that brand into how you're going to share with others who you are and what you bring to the table. So it's all connected.
Yeah, thanks for that. And we're going to get back to the branding because that's also a very key part of when you're doing your pitch. And thank you very much for that, Sharon, about what is your passion and what brings you joy and what is authentic about you, right? Siobhan.
When you talk about that striking that balance between what what you've accomplished and then not feeling like you're bragging, it's really hard space for a lot of individuals, especially to remain authentic somewhere in between. And I can tell you honestly that I struggle in that area in terms of letting people know how much work that I've accomplished and then coming across as like not bragging, but at the same time being proud. And it's a very hard balance. And I think for a lot of people, some people may say, well, you do it really great and you're really good in terms of branding. But, I have to sit there and think about it and sometimes lament about it for days to get it just right in terms of the wording. And then, some people will look at it and they're upset because they see it as, well, you're doing all this really great stuff, but I'm not. And it's it's their own reflections of their own self and their own self-worth, which really has nothing to do with you. And then you have those that are looking at it and seeing, you know what, this is awesome. Now I can do this stuff too, because to the point of representation matters, it really does. So when you're pitching and you're talking to people about all the things that you've been able to accomplish, you're actually empowering quite a lot of individuals without you knowing, even though you might have a few people upset too. So this is where that delicate balance comes into play in terms of being confident in terms of what you've been able to accomplish. And at the same time, expressing that you're able to be there to help serve and support and help them achieve their goals too. So for me, it's a really hard balance back and forth, but it's a necessary one. And then especially when you're raised as women of color, to be told, you need to just simmer down and you need to dim your light and you need to not speak so much. All these things play in your mind. And so when you're trying to put together an elevator speech, the best piece of advice I could say is, you have to silence some of that monkey chatter and some of that noise, excessive noise, and just really focus on what is it that you do, what value can you bring, and what are you passionate about? And that will shine through more and resonate with the right individuals to get you to where it is you want to be.
So my background is linguistics, so I'm always conscious of languaging. So what kind of phrases would you use to toot your horn? What kind of sentences that work?
Who are you throwing that question to?
Anybody who wants to answer it.
Yeah, I think it's about talking about, what your capabilities are from a strengths perspective. This is what I'm known for. You could start it off that way, I think, because then you can articulate the examples through opening the door that way. But also being vulnerable and open to saying, look, I'm continuing to grow. And so these are the things I'm working on to continue to develop and grow, because we don't stop at a point in time, whether or not we have a degree or we've taken a few courses. Like it's about continuous learning and growth. And so I think if you can demonstrate the fact that you do have strengths, but you're also self-aware about what you want to continue to develop, that combination, I think is very powerful.
Nice. I like that. Sharon?
And I think, so Michelle, you said it very well there. You nailed it. And And Sarah, it ties back into, again, your personal branding. It's about your reputation. It's about who you are, what you stand for. It's your values. It's the intersection of your voice, your personality, your passions, people's perception of you, so it's all those things, and it is continuous learning. And it's the ability to accept constructive criticism and
Oh,
act on it. So that's one of the key learnings that even for me, as a professional to this day, from my mentors and my sponsors, is listening, accepting that, and building on it has made me into, and continues to make me into a better leader. That's one of the key things.
Speaking of constructive criticism, was there ever a time, or have there been times when your 30-second elevator speech backfired badly? Like it just didn't work. It just blew up in your face, and you were embarrassed, and examples, your most memorable ones. Siobhan?
I'm thinking of that, like maybe like we used to try, maybe probably earlier on in my career, of like trying to explain what I'm doing, either talking too long with too many things, or speaking to an audience that just did not understand what it is that I'm doing. And I think that one's actually the hardest, and especially when the audience is particularly younger and have not had any experience in the corporate world, and you try to explain some. So then I have to think about, like, what would I say to my kids when I explain what it is that I do? And I had to take that as good learning. So this is what I say I do, like when I say I do performance management, I say, think about like when you got report cards and somebody gives you a review. That's what we do, but with grown folks.
You're right, Siobhan. It's about knowing your audience. And if I think back, is again, don't say too much. Like knowing your audience, crafting it, practicing it, replaying it, write it out, know it in your head. Now, when I think back years ago, it was about just thinking about what is so unique about you? What's that uniqueness about you that sets you aside from everyone else? You know what I mean? And so, because we all have a lot of various skill sets that are similar, but think about what's that unique thing that when you're out there that you want to say, this is who I am. Yeah.
And I'll just close on this question, because it's a really important one. It's about, the L, and the L is about what you learned. Every opportunity, whether it went bad, like it's just an opportunity to learn about what I can do differently, right? And so back to the point about continuous growth, that's an opportunity not for you to like beat yourself up, right? And say, oh, I did that horribly. Yeah, it might not have worked out well. But just stepping back and going, okay, the next time, how could I have approached it? What could I do to plan and prepare and practice? That will then help build that muscle in a way that you don't even have to think about it. It just comes out of you because you're now in a better place of knowing what you need to do differently. So it's all about, the L is really for the learn and the lesson.
Yeah. So what do you do when you're not just professionally, but in a social networking, event, and you're trying to, to introduce yourself, etc., to somebody who you think might be a good person to add to your network, and they react negatively. So what do you do? What do you say? What's your body language? What do you do?
I think I would
Because
just
that's
address.
happened to us, right?
I would probably just look at their facial expression and just call it out, like, oh, did I say something to offend you? I'm sorry, that was not my intention. Let's start over. That I would try that, or see, is there something else I could help you to understand where I'm coming from? I probably would start teasing out.
Michelle?
Yeah, and in some instances, you might just thank them for their time, appreciate the listening, and maybe just step back and move on. Again, it really depends on who you're in front of, and what they might be dealing with. Because sometimes we take the opportunity to have these elevator pitches, and we don't know what that other person is dealing with at the moment. And it might not necessarily be you; it just might be where they are. So just thank them for their time. and say if there's an opportunity in the future for us to connect again, would be happy to do so, and then see where it goes from there. You never know, that person might reach back out to you, but they might not. And so it's about moving forward and then taking the opportunity to develop and prepare for that next pitch.
I like that. Start over. Thank them for their time, but don't close the door. Leave the door open. Sharon?
No, I think Siobhan and Michelle truly nailed that in terms of what they just said. It's like you never know what's going on with that person right away. So don't take it personally, but definitely say thank you and, you know, and step away.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about selling ourselves and our qualities and our skills, etc. Now, one thing that's very difficult is fundraising. Elevator pitches for fundraising for your projects and programs, your initiatives. How do you go about that? And why are people so uncomfortable? Some people, not all people, but making pitches for a fundraising initiative.
I'm gonna jump in and just talk about it in a more general sense, but I think it's the vulnerability. Because when you're asking for something, you don't want to necessarily get that no, but you know, unless if you don't ask, you won't get fed. You won't get. So it's going to be really important to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And again, part of that is doing it once, doing it twice, doing it 3 times, doing it 10 times. And so when you might get that no, you know you're going to move on to get that next yes, because you might have a couple of no's and then that yes is like right behind it. So it's the vulnerability that I can see that could be a challenge.
Siobhan?
I think sometimes asking for it right off the bat can be a bit off-putting if the person doesn't really understand what it is you're trying to accomplish, the overall goal, the why. I think you actually have to start with that there, like, why are you asking for this? What's the overall outcome? What's the value that this is going to be bringing? And then how can this individual help to assist that overall goal? I find oftentimes when the fundraising aspect or the asking for money is like the first or second thing that comes out of this person's mouth, and I really haven't established any relationship with them, I'm a little bit pushed back. It's kind of like on people who are on LinkedIn and they ask to be a connection. And then the first message they send you is like, can you donate? Or, you know, I want a meeting with you to talk about this, but I don't know you. You don't really know me. I'm not going to just give you my time to start off with, like, and then you're going to be asking me for an investment right off the bat. You actually have to take a moment to get to know the person and figure out what's valuable to them before you can come in with the fundraising pitch. Because if they don't see that link, then it's not going to work out for you. You're actually just going to be offending people, or you might notice that people just start avoiding you altogether because they feel that there's not an exchange of value. You're just going in and asking for something, and you're coming in at a deficit because you haven't built up the relationship credit.
Build the relationship first, and then sort of ease into the asking for money. Sharon?
If I can add to that, and Siobhan, you know, made some really great points there. You know, in my current role, you know, overseeing the All In Initiative, it's about in-kind services, but lots of times people think I have all this money and I work for Rogers. And it's about, what I would say is, do your homework first. So do some investigation. And Siobhan was right. A lot of people reach out to me through LinkedIn, and I am not that person to really, but if you do your homework and you know, and you ask the questions, like don't come and just say, hey, I'm looking for this money, but really say, listen, you know what? Tell the story, share the story. Like, here is my organization. Maybe you can help point me in the right direction. Who do I need to speak to? Here's what we're looking for. Here's what we're currently doing or what we've done. Even talk about, you know, we've received funding from this organization, but we're still looking for this. So it's how you share that story, and it's your approach. And then that person might be apt to say, okay, you know what? Here's who you need to email, and make sure you include a 1-pager with an overview of your organization and what you're looking for.
Excellent, excellent tips.
Just to your
So,
point, the proof is important, very important. If I don't see proof
yeah,
points, or I don't see something that is going to hook me and enough that I can actually sell that one back to my client group or my group at work, whatever,
Yeah.
then I'm not interested. Just as simple of like, hey, let's meet to talk. Like, I don't have time for that. My time is valuable. So you have to come in with something really strong that's related to what I'm doing. And the only way you're going to find that out is if you're doing your homework and you're paying attention.
excellent. So let's say you're doing your elevator pitch, and then some random person just comes and interrupts. You're right. Come on, it's happened to us. It happens to me all the time. You know, you're on a roll. You're going, you've got it all together, you've got you've got your branding is in your mind, your strategy is tight, etc. Boom, you're off. And then somebody just comes and cuts in. What do you do?
I just say remain calm,
Yeah.
because those things might happen. If it's physically in an elevator, someone could bump you, unintentionally, and you shift and move and it just throws you off. But just remain calm and stay connected to the conversation as much as you can. But again, like that elevator pitch, those moments it's like a sound bite to the next conversation. It's to really start that connection. And so if it does get disrupted, just say, I know, we weren't able to maybe finish our chat, but would love to continue it another time. Right. So you just stay connected and stay focused. So
All right.
That's
Love it,
really
love it,
good
love it.
advice.
That's really
Yes, it
good,
is.
Michelle.
I'm going to use that. Sharon. Sharon?
No, Michelle nailed it.
Yeah.
Michelle nailed it.
Siobhan?
Yeah, it's no different than if you're talking to them and the phone rings, right? Then
Yeah.
you're done. And so all you can do is just like talk to you later. And then you actually send them a message. You can follow up depending on who they are, right? Like I might not go straight to the CEO and send them a message like just to continue the conversation, unless it's something that's really of high urgency or high importance. Then, I would say, unfortunately we got cut off, but I wanted to mention X, Y, and Z. Keep it short, couple of bullet points, and get to the point.
So I'm sure you obviously have been pitched to, because you've got all this great advice for people trying to pitch ideas themselves, opportunities, etc. How would you overcome nervousness?
Well, I find the most important thing with that is to remain calm inside. I mean, there's going to be some nervousness because you're excited about what you're talking about, with the whatever you're passionate about, that's going to come through. But imagine that you're just talking to your best friend for a moment. And when you talk to your best friend, you're usually quite calm. You'll be energetic. You're just having a conversation. It's a bit more casual. And you're not trying to sell your best friend on something. You're just merely speaking. And I think people will appreciate that they're not being sold on. When people feel that sense of you're trying to sell me on something, this is where there's a misalignment between the energies. What you're trying to do is just show them what you're passionate about or something that can add value to them. And I think when you're just having a casual conversation with someone, that's when things are easy. When it feels like I have to pitch them because I need this money, because I need to live or I need to pay the next bill, this is where the energy starts to shift. And then it goes all wrong. Then your nervousness levels actually go up even higher because you're putting higher stakes to what it's worth, right? When you know that I have a really strong message and I'm really passionate about what I'm speaking about, let that lead with that, because that will come across loud and clear. And you're just connecting like you would with any friend or any family member. Don't visualize them like naked. That's a really bad tip that was given, right? To try to like reduce your nerves. It's very, very bad, because I don't want to see that with some people. So most people, I don't want to see that. But what we want to do is just connect with them on a human to human level. And when people sense that, they tend to be a little bit more open. It's a genuine, authentic conversation, and let it just evolve from that point.
Michelle?
yeah, and especially when you're getting comfortable with speaking about yourself and it's something that you're innately uncomfortable doing, it's about practice. The more you practice, like stand in front of the mirror, take those 3 sentences that you're going to want to say and make them feel authentic. Because in any interaction, the person that you're you're sharing your strengths with and what you're working on with wants to know who you are as a person, because that's all around building that relationship. And so if you can do that, then, that anxiety should dissipate over time. Initially, it'll be strong, but then over time, once you get more comfortable, it'll be like honestly breathing. You won't even think about it. It'll just come naturally.
Sharon?
And if I can add, really remembering that the purpose of the elevator pitch is to mainly grab the other person's attention. So the attention of the listener. So you want to give them exactly that information. Siobhan said it, don't oversell, make sure you're confident, believe in yourself, know your product or know what you bring to the table. Practice, practice, practice. Michelle said it, same thing. And just be yourself and it will come across just naturally. You'll find yourself naturally having a natural conversation. Yeah.
So phrases to not say when you're pitching.
Don't get overly technical. Don't use too much industry jargon. Keep it simple is what I would say. Just keep it, depending on your product, keep it very, very simple and just try to get to that point so that first impression when you're finished speaking to that, whether it's a potential employer or a potential business partner, they might go away going, okay, I'll remember that person because of how calm they were, their delivery. It's all about your approach. So don't try to make it too rehearsed per se.
Yeah, because we've all met those jargony people who come at you with all of this HR jargon and technical jargon, TV speak and all of this stuff. And you're going, no, I ain't about all that right now. I have a headache. It's the end of the day.
The
What are you
dictionary
doing?
of acronyms for sure.
Yeah. Acronyms. Yes. Yeah. Avoid acronyms, avoid being too technical. Siobhan, what should you avoid in your elevator pitch?
I would just reiterate the two same points there between those. The acronyms are probably the worst because people have no idea what that means if they're not in the particular industry. And even if they are in the same industry, they still might not know what it means because it may have a completely different meaning from one company to another. So I think it's important to not do that. And at the end of the day, you just want to be short, clear, and concise, but also just speak from the heart. Right. And as soon as you start coming in with anything like the other one that I think is you should and you must. I don't like those words either because I feel like you're trying to tell me what I need to be doing. And even though I want you to do something, I highly suggest or I recommend, encourage. I would prefer those words over you should and you must.
Very good. I like that. The linguist in me is grabbing onto that particularly, the words that encourage and entice, and as opposed to yes. So, okay, we talked about pitching in person, where you can see the body language and how they're standing and how they're shifting and if they seem uncomfortable around you, etc. But during the pandemic, over those 2 years, it was virtual. A lot of it was virtual. So is there a difference between when you're pitching in person and when you're pitching something virtually, a project, an idea, fundraising? Sharon?
So the tips for virtual elevator pitches. So all the same guidelines that everyone spoke about for when you're doing an elevator pitch applies. But when you're doing it virtually, whether it's a virtual career fair or a job interview over Zoom or even during a networking, one of the key things is to make sure you check how you look. You want to make sure you have a clean professional background, your space is well lit. There aren't any distracting shadows. If you live, with your family, you might want to make sure you let people know, put a note. I remember when I was doing an interview for work, my hubby, what he did, he printed off a piece of paper and put it around the house. Sharon is on an interview, like a video call or interview. So people know, keep the voice down, keep the TV low, keep all that stuff. you also want to make eye contact. So try practicing beforehand. One of the things that I would do if I have to go on a Teams call and it's a video call, I'll call one of my friends and say, how do I look? Like we would do a practice beforehand. Can you see behind me? Is there everything okay? Because you want to make sure all of that stuff is done. You want to make that eye contact. And Siobhan's talked about it, the energy. So with in-person pitches, you'll want to avoid speaking too quickly, you know, not too monotone, but keep your energy high, because it's easier for people to be distracted during, there's a lot of stuff going on during video meetings. So you want to be able to grasp their attention.
Michelle?
I would say stay focused. To your point about, you know, all the things, the distractions, your phone goes off, you know, the dog barks, whatever happens. It's just really important to give the person that that you're looking at on the screen your 100% attention, so that that connection can be built in a different way, but can still be as strong. So that's my perspective, is just staying focused, making sure, like, eliminating as many distractions as possible. And, you know, to your point about the energy, keeping that energy as high as possible, because it's different, it's in a different way. And so you just need to be intentional with that as well.
Siobhan?
A couple of points, like backgrounds, I think are important too. So if you are pitching them about a particular product, you could strategically have a background that's promoting that. If it's not so much about the product and you are the product, then you blur your background, or make sure that there's not a bunch of distracting things. You can show your energy through hand movements and body language, inflection and tone. You don't want to have so much body language that it looks like the Matrix, that you're doing all of this. That's distracting. But every so often, you know, a subtle hand gesture, it shows that you are enthusiastic. Smiling also helps too. Nodding when the person is talking in alignment. So there's some things you could do. Leaning forward versus leaning back. Like, this is less engaging than this is. So, you know, there's some subtle things that you can do, even if you're mirroring the other person's behavior. If they seem to be moving forward, you move forward. If they're moving back, don't lean all the way back, because then you're both going to start disengaging. But you want to engage with them to pull them forward and get into the conversation. So knowing when to pause, when to ask questions, to ensure that they understand and that this is something that they are in agreement with, is also really good.
Wow, a lot of great advice. I don't know if there's any questions from our audience. I'm trying to monitor the chat to see. You seem to be, I guess, answering a lot of questions. Do you have anything else you want to highlight about elevator pitches that we haven't?
If I could jump in, it's more about, so let's talk about quickly the interviewing, because the tell me about yourself question that comes up is an elevator pitch. And so if I can quickly touch on this, and this is the part where people say the wrong things and they lose the job opportunity. So when a hiring manager asks you to interview this question, and I know Siobhan and Michelle will have great context to add, and they say, tell me about yourself. Remember, they already have your CV, your resume, so they have that information. They're not actually asking you about your whole life story. They're not asking about your parents' background, your dog or cat's names. It's about, you know, you have that same 30 seconds to really talk about what are you bringing to the table, right? So you want to do that switch where you're like talking about what value you can bring to the company. So refer to the job itself and kind of show your successes and your strengths based on the job description and what you bring to the company and what problems you can solve for the company. That's what they're looking for. Don't ramble, be yourself, be authentic, but not fake. And remember, you don't need to share everything. And one other tip quickly is, if you're doing an internal, so you're going for another position within the company that you work for, and it's a panel interview, and you know the people that are interviewing you, you still need to do that elevator pitch. So you need to present yourself as though this would be the panel into people who are interviewing you are from like another company. So don't get comfortable because, well, I know Mr. So-and-so or Miss, no, still present yourself in that professional manner.
Michelle?
Some great points that were just shared. I would say in terms of like if we were to take that elevator pitch and it became another conversation that could lead itself to an interview. Again, it's about that preparation, making sure that leader understands what you bring to the table from outcomes and that teaming aspect. Because to the point of your resume, like really does describe all the things that you've accomplished, but sometimes it doesn't talk about how you team with others and how you build relationships and how you maintain those relationships. So it's just important to be able to continue to describe who you are, what you do, what you bring to the table in a way that is impactful and also enables that leader to say, you know what, I need to choose any of you on this panel, all of those who are, listening today. And so that's going to be the differentiator to you getting that position.
Siobhan?
I think you need to do your research too, to find out what's the values of the organization, the key competencies that you've demonstrated along the way. Because when you're in an interview, they have seen so many candidates before and after you. So how are you going to stand out? You're going to have to be able to talk in specific measurable terms. What was the impact? Who were you working with? What did you do individually versus the team did? They're going to want to know those nuances in there. But when you're just talking about you can be you can be really specific in terms of what were those impactful moments, but linking it back to a specific competency that relates to the job is really important too. So you got to go back to that job description, and it doesn't always talk about all the values. So if you're able to do those linkages for them, this is where they know, okay, not only have you done your research and you're prepared, that you're drawing really concrete evidence in terms of how you can add value to the organization.
Yeah, and also just to add to that, a lot of leaders like to see that, to your point, research has been done, but also reaching out to peers and those who are doing the job, like what are the things, what's really important to the leader, demonstrating that you're really truly interested and will go that extra mile to do something different than the rest of the individuals who are, applying for that same position will definitely make a difference.
So Sharon, Patrice wants to know your thoughts on balancing saying enough to showcase your accomplishments versus not assuming that they have read your resume beforehand. How do you balance that?
So that's a great question. So I would say right off the top, if you can think about it's all about, so when you do that intro and you say, I've worked in this particular industry over how many years, and you just quickly at the top give an accomplishment. So talk about an accomplishment within that specific role, and then tie that accomplishment back into the job itself that you are applying for. So it's that kind of like a balance. So you know, at the beginning, it's the success, tying it back in, then demonstrating your strengths, and then what are you known for? And Michelle said it as well. Maybe if you can add a bit of learnings in there, that this is what I've learned, that also shows that hiring manager that here is someone that, that's coming into this role or looking for a new opportunity that's not a know-it-all, but they're open to new learnings.
That's very, very sage advice. I have a question about name dropping. You've sort of all skirted around the issue to a certain extent. When do you not name drop? And how much name dropping do you do in your 30-second elevator speech?
I'll start off. I don't generally name drop. The focus of the conversation is about you and who you are and what you bring to the table. It's interesting that you know a lot of people, but ultimately if you're going to get that job in the future, if you're going to be able to be on that project, it's going to be about what you can deliver and bring to the table and how you team and how you operate. So take the opportunity to speak about yourself and what you do and what you do well. I think that would be my recommendation.
Yeah. That's tying back in, and Michelle, you nailed it. It's tying back in about advocating for yourself. And if you're comfortable in your skin, then you don't need to name drop. If you're confident about who you are and what you bring to the table, you don't need to do that. There's no reason for doing that.
I think it depends. Like if you're going for a job interview, you might not need to do that. But if you're going for, let's say you're doing speaking engagements and they're trying to hire, the difference between you and another speaker, you may need to name drop, because then they may need to see like what circles, what's the caliber of performances that you've delivered, like what does that look like? And then you might need to leverage some of that. But to your day-to-day job, that might not be necessary at all. You can just focus in on your accomplishments and how that's gone. But I know for me personally, if I'm looking for a speaking engagement and I'm putting together a bio, there might be instances where I will include that so that they understand why are they paying you a certain amount of money compared to somebody else. So again, as I said, it depends.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
I'll just add just very quickly that as you get into that interview process and they're trying to decide who's going to be the successful candidate, it could be about who in your network knows who you are, like the mentors, your sponsors and things like that. So it goes back to the relationships that you build. That is also helpful in your success in the movement of your career, because you never know, the person that is your peer today could be your manager tomorrow, could be the VP tomorrow. So you just got to make sure you're always continuing to build positive and strong relationships throughout your career.
Yeah, that's very, very sage advice. And I do speaking engagements as well. And that's why I was asking that question. And I'm glad Siobhan mentioned how it can actually determine your fee. Like, their willingness to pay you a certain
absolutely
amount.
I've had clients who've said that. They've looked on the website and they're like, oh, you've spoken with these individuals, okay, and all of a sudden it puts you in a different class compared to somebody else. So sometimes that'll just speak for itself. I don't actually have to say it, but it's as part of the bio, but they need to see it, because there's a different bias. And unfortunately, there's biases that people have depending on association. So it's like that affinity bias of who are you associating with? And they'll turn around and say, yes, we want this person over this person just because of who you've spoken to in that name dropping. But when it comes to like getting the work done in an interview, I don't think it's necessary. I think your work can speak for itself with specific measurable results.
Yeah, and Siobhan, tying it back to the point about who you've worked with, those individuals might actually reach out to who you've worked with and say, what was it like to work with her, in this capacity? So then it kind of goes back to those relationships are so important. I can't underscore that enough. They are very important.
No, absolutely. And I can vouch for that, Michelle, because I've name dropped people who mentored me and have people say, what? Really? Oh my God, can we talk some more? Just because that one name of that person that mentored me was dropped. But I've also had it backfire where the relationship was not good between the person whose name I dropped and the person I'm pitching to. So it's a double-edged sword, right?
It is. And then, we hope that as humans, we give people a chance, to create a new, I'll call it, point of view on an individual, right? Because sometimes we don't always get it right. You look back and you're like, oh, I could have did that differently, or oh, that conversation didn't go as well as I wanted it to. But you hope then you have an opportunity based on all the other work that you do, that isn't the only picture that's painted about you. You have other paintings that are, in your queue and to come.
So we're coming to the end of our conversation, which has been so amazing. So many nuggets in here. Do you have anything else you want to add, or any aspect of pitching, whether it's your skills, a job opportunity?
I want to go back to the listening aspect. Because I think that that's really important. People want to lead with talking about themselves and how awesome they are and what value they can bring. But I think for you to be able to customize that pitch properly, you truly do have to listen to what is the problem that this person may have, and then solve it for them quickly, or show them how you can solve it to them in that 30 seconds and leave them wanting more. But you can't do that if you already are rehearsing the pitch in your head and you're focusing more on getting all the words right and articulating yourself perfectly. You'll miss the opportunity to really hone in on what their gap is or what's keeping them up at night, and being able to just address those key issues. And once people are hooked there, then you'll have more opportunities to talk about all the amazing things that you've done.
Michelle?
No, and Siobhan just, shared some amazing points. It's about being authentic. And sometimes when you start off with what you want to try to deliver, you need to just, put it on paper, read it out loud, see how it feels, and then it'll become your own voice. I remember when I was doing presentations and really struggling initially with doing it because I was, fearful. You have, a room full of people in front of you and you're not sure if you're going to stumble. But then I took the time to start to practice what I wanted to say. And then eventually it came out in my own voice. The first couple of times I did it with paper. The last, 2 or 3 times that I did it, because I was doing some tours across the country, I didn't need the paper anymore. So again, it becomes more about your voice and who you are, and that will become more natural to you over time.
So what do you do when you lose your train of thought? I'm sure that's happened to you when you're on a roll, you're doing it, and then all of a sudden, right in the middle of your pitch, you lose your train of thought for whatever reason.
Sometimes I'll just say, I need a moment. And then just that silence sometimes is hard because you don't want to have silence in the room. Some people feel uncomfortable with that silence, but it's okay to have a bit of silence so you can regroup and then come back to your thoughts.
Sometimes I just make a joke out of it.
Yeah.
If I'm totally honest, I might just sit there and just say, oh, and then I'll pause for a second, like as I'm trying to regain my thought, and I go like, I think I just had a brain fart or something right now. So give me a second. And the person starts laughing, right? Just like that. And then it would buy me a few more seconds to like try to recover, to go on, as I was saying, blah, 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 blah. But it breaks the ice. And then people generally feel a little bit more comfortable. And then that's me being more authentic, right? And not getting caught up on being perfect. And I think sometimes it's like when you write out something, there's this tendency to wanting to say everything perfectly, every word, every intonation. And then if you're saying your pitch and you forget a word, you get messed up. And here's the thing, they don't know what you were going to say. So it doesn't really matter what you say, right?
Right.
But we get caught up in making sure that we've got every word for word, like we wrote it out, and it's not necessary. And that's something that I've learned a long time ago in learning and doing presentations all the time. The audience has no idea what you're going to say next. So it doesn't matter if you mess it up, they don't know, just keep going. And don't worry about perfection, worry about connection. So when you authentically connect, all of that, goes away.
Okay, you need to rewind that right now. Don't worry about
perfection.
Worry about
connection.
Repeat. I'm getting a t-shirt.
I'm
getting that t-shirt. Wow. Yeah. So last word.
Don't worry about, let's focus on connection. So like, don't worry about perfection. Focus on connection. Yeah.
I'm getting that t-shirt too.
I don't want people to worry about connecting. I just would make sure to say that, because then that'll be filling their minds with like, oh no, I need to pay attention. Just focus on the connecting part, and everything else should go fine.
Excellent. So last, like your parting advice to really just wrap up this wonderful conversation we've had.
I think I already did a pen drop on that last sentence.
No, I was just going to say, like, growth is continuous, right? And, to Siobhan's point, to Sharon's point, to your point, Sarah, it's about being authentic and letting people know who you are, and that'll come through your words. Some people take different avenues to get there, but ultimately it's just being authentic and coming across in that way. And then you will connect and attract those people to you, and then those opportunities will come.
Mm-hmm. Siobhan?
I don't know how I can top that last that saying about that. Don't worry about perfection, focus on connection. Aside from, just sometimes it's just a matter of just being centered, be clear in terms of your intention and what you're trying to relate to somebody. And when you practice enough and it becomes your own, this is when you become really amazing, because that's your authentic self starts to come out. And that's where the connection becomes so much easier. Just be you, be authentically you all the time, and just relax, right? Your message is important. And with the passion, it'll come across, and then that person will get it. And if it's for them, it is meant for them. If it's not meant for them, disengage. There's always somebody else who wants to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. This has been an incredible conversation, so many nuggets, and we've got a t-shirt out of it that you can go and copyright, Siobhan. So many nuggets about authenticity, about listening to the person in front of you, about understanding your own value, your own, what you bring to the table and what you can do to provide value for the person you're talking to as well, practicing, ongoing learning. Amazing. Thank you so much, Siobhan Calderbank, Michelle Agard, and Sharon Hines for this wonderful, wonderful conversation. And I don't think we have any more questions, so we'll just end it there. And thank everybody on YouTube, on the Zoom call, for joining us for this 100 ABC Women Fireside Chat.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine,